The next question is, what is the first plant you remember having a relationship with as a kid? And the simple answer to that is plantain. Although when I was 4 or 3 or 5, somewhere in that time frame, when I was using it, I had no idea of its name, nor had anyone ever shown it to me. So one day I'm out in the backyard and I have one of those like plastic bins and I'm picking just plantain leaves, the round leaf plantain. I'm picking plantain leaves and then I added a little bit of water and I had a rock and I'm mashing it up into a mush. And my mother comes out and she goes to me, "What are you doing?" I mean, because I'm kind of getting it all over me and everything because I'm smashing it with the rock. And I said, "Oh, I'm making medicine. This is good if you get a cut or a boo-boo or a bug bite or whatever." And my mother just shakes her head and just says to me, "Well, just make sure you don't eat it." Nobody told me this. I don't really remember. I mean, I was 4 or 5 probably. Yeah, probably 4 or 5. I just remember my sense was that the plant told me that it was good for those things and I could do it. And so that's my first memory of really getting to know a plant. Now, the next one that I would, and there were, I learned about wild, blackberries and I would pick the fruits and things like that. Right behind me, there was a farm and, I used to play in the woods there all the time. But the next thing that was really eventful for me, I was probably about 11 years old, maybe, or yeah, 11. And for the only time in my life, I was a Boy Scout or a Cub Scout, not for very long, but they had a camp that you would go to. And it was the first time I went away from home without my parents. I was like 11 years old. And for the most part, I didn't really enjoy it very much. The older kids weren't very nice. Like you'd go in the shower and they'd steal your clothes, stuff like that. Anyway, but there was a counselor who obviously knew a few edible plants, and he showed them to us. And he had this one plant that looked like a clover, but it wasn't. It had yellow flowers, not white flowers, and the clover flowers didn't look anything like clover flowers. And he told us to try them, and it was this wonderful sour flavor. And as a kid, even as an adult, I prefer sour to sweet all the time. And I thought it was just wonderful tasting. It was this lemony lime flavor, and I just loved it. He probably told us what it was called, although I have no idea. He probably knew a common name, and there are many common names for this plant. And I was so fascinated by this that I started going to the library. And you have to understand that this is around the late 60s. This would have been around 1967. And finding books in the library at that time on like edible plants was not easy to do. But eventually I figured out what this plant was, and it's called sheep sorrel. And in a sense, that herb led me to the first edible plant book that I ever read, which was Stalking the Wild Asparagus by Yule Gibbons. Then I read his book, Stalking the Healthful Herbs, and I never looked back.